Welcome to this UNET Plus debate on youth unemployment. Presented within the Citizens Corner concept, the debate is produced and hosted by UNET Plus and Portugal's Radio Renaissance, a member of the UNET Plus network. The debate can be followed live in European Parliament on the UNET Plus Inside website, on our Facebook profile, as well as on Twitter using the hashtag Citizens Corner. I'm Brian Maguire. Joining us today to discuss cutting Europe's youth unemployment, is it mission impossible? Terry Reintke, MEP from Germany, from the Greens. Detlef Eckert from the Director of Skills for the European Commission's DG Employment. Christy Swing, member of the European Economic and Social Committee Employers Group. And Pablo Hernandez, External Relations Director at the European Students Forum. We're also joined by students from our university campus networks, Katerina Puacho from Poland and Fabio Cosana from Spain. Welcome to all of you. Terry, let's start with you. When you are in Germany, do you see today still a serious problem with youth unemployment, or do you see things getting better?
Well, Germany is one of the countries in the European Union where youth unemployment is less of a problem than in many other European countries. The numbers are quite low. What we are seeing in Germany, though, is that we have a lot of problems with precarious working conditions for young people. So even in countries with very low youth unemployment in numbers, we have a lot of challenges for young people in the labor market.
Okay, Christa, in Austria has a really good presentation in terms of apprenticeships and how you get people from college into apprenticeships into the workplace. What's the secret of Austria's success?
Well, I guess one of the secrets is that you involve the employers at a rather early stage, meaning that the employers are involved in the design of curricula, so that the apprenticeships that people get are really close to the needs of the labor market.
Okay, definitely. When you're working out the policies for the European Commission when it comes to skills, shouldn't we just copy Austria when it comes to this?
Well, this is one of the options. When you refer to the so-called dual system, which is not only part of the Austrian system, but also the German and the Swiss system, actually, which facilitates the transition from education to work tremendously. A couple of countries are trying to import some of the elements of it, but it's difficult to just copy the whole system as such.
What are the big obstacles?
Well, the big obstacle is you need a certain infrastructure and, for instance, to recognize qualifications, and you have to have an understanding that companies actually have a very important role to define the curricula, which is a philosophy which is not really prevalent in many member states. In addition, companies also need to be willing to educate and train people, and this is also something where in a lot of countries, companies are not willing to do that job.
Okay, Pablo, when your organization is working across Europe, do you participate a lot with companies?
I could say that not actually that much. We tend to gather students with other students because we believe that not all companies are a part of this scheme, but students are the core of it. And what we want is to empower these people to talk to each other, to develop some concepts, and then to bring it to the institutions. And the institutions have to be the one that are linking the students, me as representative of our youth youth and students forum, and also the companies.
Okay, Terry, when we talk about youth unemployment, we're not just talking about an issue of employment. We're not talking about something to do with democracy and how people perceive the European project and whether it's viable and worthwhile doing. Should this not be more of a priority in this moment?
Definitely, and I believe that, we can speak about skills enhancement, we can speak about better educational system, but in the end it should be a mainstream topic that goes through all different policy fields, because the question of how can we fight youth unemployment is very closely linked to, for example, investment policies in the European Union, because when we look at the numbers, 24 million unemployed, amongst them 7.5 million young people, and then 2 million job vacancies in the European Union at the moment, we see that it's not only a question of transition or of skill enhancement, it's also a question of a job deficit that we are facing, and we need better investment policies, but also in other areas we need to have a joint effort in order to solve this problem of youth unemployment.
Okay, Katerina, you have a question for the panel?
Yeah. Youth unemployment in the European Union is uneven. In Germany, it's amount about 8%. At the same time, it stands 53% in Spain. And my question is, how should the European Union reduce these disproportions?
Okay, Krista, what should the European Union be doing that it isn't already doing?
Well, I think the European Union did something very important. That was the youth guarantee, implementing the youth guarantee, which is, to me, is also a cornerstone in order to start structural reforms. Because in some countries where you have an extremely high youth unemployment, you have a structural deficit, meaning that you have labor market institutions which are not working, you have an education system which is not close to the labor market, and I think for starting reforms on all this, the youth guarantee was a perfect angle and the perfect starting point. But now it's up to member states, of course, to work on there.
Okay, Giorgio on Facebook, he says, if the fight against youth unemployment is the priority for the EU, why don't we have more money for the youth guarantee? Detlef?
Well, we provided 6.4 billion euro for 2 years. The money is now being spent with a quite significant delay, unfortunately, but it's now being spent. The question will be whether we should top it up. This is a political question, and a question very much that can be addressed to the Parliament as well. One should also say that the scope of the problem goes beyond the possibility of the EU budget. As you rightly said, this is something for the member states to actually mobilize the adequate funding. So our money is basically a kind of stimulus, should be topped up by the member states. And what we see is that this is not the case. So we are trying to push more in the member states, structural reforms in the way the labor market works with the education side. But it's definitely something where member states need to do more.
Okay.
May I interfere, or may I challenge this idea, because I believe that the countries where the problem of youth unemployment is the highest, if you say now the national budget needs to be used to top it up, it's mostly also the countries where there is the most pressure on the national budgets at the moment. So when we look at Spain or Greece, where the numbers are really high, there is very little space to maneuver for the governments to top this money up. So I believe there is more effort needed also from the European level, and indeed we will have to see that after these 2 years, how can we continue the projects, because there have been in many of the member states projects started, and now I believe that we will need efforts from the European level as well to make these projects continue, because I believe from a young person's point of view, if you get an opportunity and then after 2 years the money is gone and then it's not going to be continued, it's a very bad signal for your future and for your perspectives.
Pablo, we talk about the internships. Are internships worth anything today?
Totally. But I have to point out that as the internship have to be the step between the formal education and the labor market as such. But it cannot be the only way, and it cannot be at any cost. Internship has to have quality in it. That means that they have to be paid, because otherwise students have to have all kind of support from their families and so on. And we know, I'm from Spain, and we know that this society is not able to cover these expenses. And it has to have also a role and educational output out of this internship. If we don't find this educational output in the internship, this internship is not worth it at all.
Okay, Martin Schulz, President of the European Parliament, tweeted a few minutes ago, very much share spirit and objective of Interns Day for paid quality formal internships, stepping stone to full employment and further education. Is he right, Krista?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Sure. Martin Schulz, he's saying that the paid internship should be paid, should be good quality, and should be formal, and they're a stepping stone. Is he right, or are internships just an exploitation?
No, I think there are, well, I think what lacks in a lot of member states is the real practical work experience. And it depends very much what you do. For instance, we have internships where the people are not working. They are just looking over the shoulder of someone who is there, and they are just getting an idea what this person does. This is not work. So in that case, if it's not paid, if they are just really there and not being integrated into the organization of the workplace, I think this is something else. But if he's really fully working, then of course he should be paid. No doubt about this.
Okay, Fabio, do you have a question for the panel?
Yeah, of course. Regarding the Youth Guarantee Scheme and the Youth Employment Initiative, both are two key programs to curb down the unemployment average in the European Union. However, in Spain, only an 8.9% of the job offers are addressed to the youth people. So I think, so here comes my question. Bearing that in mind, do you think there is a lack of connection between the formation system and the company's needs? Because these two programs, they focus the youth as the responsible of the unemployment.
Okay.
However, we don't have in Spain, we don't have jobs offers for us. So,
Terry, come to you first in this. Do we have realistic expectations? The students, they graduate. We hear many people, particularly in Spain and Portugal, Greece, who have postgraduate educations, maybe even 2 or 3 of them, working as cleaners. And there's nothing wrong with working as a cleaner, but it's a waste of time investing in education if that's what's going to be at the end of it. Why is there's such a disproportionate relationship between the quality and level of education and the quality and level of job at the end of it?
Because we are facing, and also coming to your question, we are facing a job deficit in the European Union. And then even if you have very skilled, very motivated young people in countries like Spain or Greece, they will not get appropriate job offers. So every program like the Youth Employment Initiative or the Youth Guarantee, it needs to be backed up by investment policies that actually create jobs in the economy, because otherwise you will not create the employment that is needed in order to have job offers for young people.
Okay, Krista, entrepreneurship, where does this fit within youth unemployment?
I think that's the key point. I mean, if you don't have enterprises who are asking for people, you won't have any jobs. So I'm not so convinced that you have to invest, and that doesn't create jobs as such. What you need is to have a business-friendly environment that helps enterprises to get up and that helps enterprises to offer jobs to young people.
I mean, I was in Greece 2 weeks ago, and one of the things that many young entrepreneurs were saying to me, that they have problems getting credits or loans in banks because the banks have liquidity problems, and what they need at the moment is cash to start. And this is, we are not talking about millions of euros, we are talking about 5,000-10,000 euros in order to start a business. And this is exactly the kind of small-scale, sustainable investment that we need. And I don't think it's necessarily opposing each other, but if in countries like Greece we don't have the public going in with investments and giving these business opportunities to young people, especially also in social economy or the digital sector right now, I believe that we are losing a lot of potential, not only when it comes to jobs, but also when it comes to great ideas and innovative ways of how to do economy. Okay,
definitely just a particular aspect of this. The single market, that's the whole raison d'etre in principle of what we're doing in today's economy. But we're still so far away from having a level playing field when it comes to entrepreneurship. You know, in the UK, it takes literally 10 minutes to form a company online. In Belgium, I can tell you from personal experience, it does not take 10 minutes. And Belgium is not even the worst in Europe. So how can the Commission, and what is the Commission doing at the moment, what can it do more to assist this?
Yeah. One brief comment to the problem in Greece and getting funding. We have a microfinance program at European level to which also Greek banks or microfinance institutes participate. This could be used much more. The reason why it's not used is also institutional, and it's also the mindset in countries. So we have to promote it probably better, but also on the receiving end, there needs to be also the willingness to put it in practice. So this is one of the problems that we have, despite having available instruments. to your question on the single market and creation of companies, I mean, this is a long-standing request of the European Commission. We pushed it in various entrepreneurship initiatives. I think the pile of papers where this is written probably reaches to the ceiling of this room, which is pretty high. So we can only do and push more, but the point is really that we need a much better environment for entrepreneurship and creation of jobs.
I was trying to find a tweet there by Commissioner Katainen from a couple of days ago. He was saying about the first opportunities for the small business financing is starting to come through. It's taken a long time to get there, but is it going to work now? We see a couple of positive signs in some of our member states, but it needs to be much more. Does this need to be sold better?
I don't think this is a question of selling. It's certainly awareness raising is always a big issue, but it also putting the right conditions in place by the member states. And for instance, the possibilities that digital services, we speak a lot about e-government, provides to facilitate the environment is completely underexploited.
Okay, Pablo, youth entrepreneurship. What's your sense when you meet student groups, when you meet enthusiastic young people, as you spoke about earlier? What is it they want to do if they're given the opportunity?
Well, for sure, they want to meet up and they want to start their businesses. But this is just what a group of people want, and this is not the answer for all the youth and employment problems. And now we tend to say to young people, entrepreneurship is cool, just take it, you will find your job there. But that's not true 100%, because, for example, there's an instrument called SMEs instrument for funding the development of startups and businesses, but this is funding for 12%, let's say, of the applications. So for the whole amount of people, of young people that consider apply for this specific program, only 12% of them get success. And this is not the solution for the whole problem of youth unemployment. It's one of the parts of the solution, but we should not say to young people that they should be creative, they should be genius, they should have the amazing idea of creating Apple or whatever. We should have in mind that not everybody is a genius, and we should all have the same opportunities to find a quality job.
It's an interesting point. Krista, when you compare United States and the entrepreneurial culture there, even if they're not geniuses, most of them believe they are, and it's this can-do attitude and this sense that, well, if I fail, I'll get up and do it again. Is there a cultural shift rather than a structural shift which is necessary in our mentality here?
It's not my feeling, at least. I think it depends very much on the country you live in, and I think it depends very much on the organization that's out there in order to support you. Because opening up a business might be quickly done in some countries, but then if you fail and if you run bankrupt, you probably have to pay for your whole life. This is something that we don't have learned. We don't have a culture of failure. This is something that it's strange to Europe. We don't have it, and we would need to establish that compared to the US, for instance, where it is absolutely usual that you run bankrupt and 5 years later you get up and do your next enterprise. I don't know if that's the business model to apply, but I think it would probably support people who shy away now from starting a business if they know that they're allowed to fail. Huh? And the second thing is, I think in order to prevent failure, it needs a strong employers organization that support you, that give you advice, that help you with your business idea, and that help you also to run through all these business administrative things that you have to cope with.
Okay, for example, in Spain, like you mentioned, if you fail at any point and you owe money to the state can actually take your pension until you die, basically. That would never happen in the United States. It doesn't happen in the UK either, and people have greater confidence to invest. Terry, is there something that needs to be done at European level to flatten this opportunity capacity?
Well, I would say when we speak about culture, one of the things that I would really like to see in the whole narrative about what happened in the crisis is to, first of all, I mean, there are many young people out there right now who have had very frustrating experience, not only entrepreneurs, but all of them. If you look at people who have been unemployed now for 3, 4, 5 years, some even 6, I think we really need to stop this narrative of blaming the young people, and we need to give the sense back that young people are the future of Europe, and they have a lot of potential, and whatever your potential is, be it entrepreneurial, be it in any other sense, it's something that we want to support, and it will contribute to the society. And I think if we change that, then also the mood will shift in a positive way, and there is going to be more energy to really overcome this crisis and to get out of it.
Okay, definitely. Government doesn't create jobs, doesn't create businesses, but it can certainly stand in the way of growing those businesses from the very small scale. You know, can the European Commission be the entrepreneur's great friend across Europe? Is there something that it can do to really stimulate the economy? And put it in this context, and we talk about big things here in Brussels, all the big plans, but economic growth comes not from the big companies primarily. It comes from the many, many small, medium-sized enterprises, the family businesses, which make up more than 75% of the actual businesses and investment across Europe.
Well, this is true, but I would be careful about putting all the burden or the glory on small and medium-sized companies. I think the big companies still drive the economy and, in particular, innovation. The question is how to let's say get out of the way of companies creating jobs is also a long-standing one. We have pushed in various fora and through various initiatives the possibilities for companies, or to improve the environment for companies to create jobs. It starts with the macroeconomic environment, but it also improving the investment climate. So I think investments are important. But it also goes into the active policy to support companies in one way or the other. But this is clearly one of the key elements, is that we have companies that can compete at worldwide level. Jobs, this is true by the way, jobs of course will be created across the whole company, not only by the top performers, but you need the top performers in order to drive the whole economy. And I think you need leadership, and then a lot of other services and other companies will come along, and I think this is what we need to do. We need to move out from the average and go to the excellence.
Okay, Pablo.
Yeah, I think that entrepreneurship now is super trendy, and we tend to think that startups are going to be the solution. And really related with what you're saying, the investment don't have to go only to these startups that just are created now, but also to sustain and to develop those startups and those small and medium enterprises. Yeah. If we don't put our efforts in solving this gap there is in between of starting funding a lot of enterprises with maybe a clear purpose and allocating those resources to the existing ones, maybe we will be creating jobs, because those companies will be developing and hiring new people for the new infrastructure that they will need, and not just creating a startup that studies says that startups fail in 2 years. And there are just a few startups that finally become scale-ups and later on bigger enterprises. So our efforts should not go only to the creation, but also to the support and maintenance of those enterprises.
Our problem in Europe is that our successful companies that make it through the startup phase do not grow. So if you compare this is our problem. Our problem is they do not grow. And why do they don't grow? It's because our national markets are too small. If you are successful in Estonia and you cannot extend your business to the whole of Europe because there are too many issues, languages to start with, then you do not grow. And this is one of the biggest comparatively disadvantage that we have to the US, where you can grow. But I agree with you, it's not only the big high-tech creation that is important. Our microfinance fund, for instance, addresses normal people with normal business ideas, also going into social enterprises, which, by the way, is a huge new opportunities, because a lot of people want to see meaning in what they do, and so they combine an existence, a company, with social objectives. And this is a trend which is not negligible. On the contrary, it's growing.
Okay, an interesting point. The French government had some proposals in this couple of weeks ago. The Commission put out to do with the sharing and collaborative economy last week as well, and wants to move forward with that as a way to legitimize this particular area. To gain more tax revenue, obviously. But it's also perhaps touching on something which we haven't discussed yet, which is the changing nature of work. What is work today? If it's about meaningful activity, the failure of startups in the first 2 years, is this something which we should consider within the educational framework, that this process is not a waste of time, but should be invested in because it gives a certain kind of training and a certain meaning and vocation to those who'd otherwise be sitting at home with nothing to do? Christian?
Well, I can imagine that this will be quite a rewarding idea to do some training period for entrepreneurship. I mean, entrepreneurial spirit is really underdeveloped in Europe. We know that, and we should invest more, and we should give more opportunities to this field. But I fully share what Pablo just said, saying that this is not the only one. Of course not, but it's one part of the puzzle, and it's one puzzle stone, and we should not neglect it.
Okay, Fabio, you got something else to add?
Yeah, I think it's very easy to analyze this problem because my generation in the history, we are the most well-prepared generation ever. And however, we have right now the largest unemployment rate ever. So something doesn't fit. And saying that, I think, in my opinion, that the problem comes from above. It's not an educational problem. It's not a lack of practical work. You know, in Spain, we have waiters. They are engineers. You go to any cafeteria, and you can find the guy that puts you your coffee. He's an engineer. So it's really sad. So I think the one possible solution for that is creating more opportunities from above. Here I have some data in Spain also. Like in Spain, the age and experience, it's two main factors to hire a worker. And only 3 in 4 offers require work experience, and only 1 in 3 require age. So, and in 720,000 job offers, only 31% is for the youth people.
Okay.
So something doesn't fit.
To Krista and Terry. Krista, we hear a lot of complaints about older workers saying they're being pushed out of the marketplace by younger workers as well. Is there age discrimination which is affecting youth unemployment too?
I don't think so, no, because we see in countries like Sweden, for instance, who just started to go up with the retirement age, that the youth unemployment rate is quite low. So there is not a correlation between old people being on the market and young people being on the market. But to what you just said, if I may, why don't you consider more mobility? I mean, you know, we all know that Germany is desperately looking for engineers. So, and I think there are quite a lot of programs that are just trying to match these labor market discrepancies and the shortages. So I think mobility is an issue.
Okay, just to stay on mobility then, Terry. The German government funded a lot of mobility last year and the year before. The money ran out. People didn't really get to where they thought they were going to get to in terms of job offers and sustainability within Germany. What's the solution? What lessons did Germany learn from this?
Well, I think that the program that was implemented, there were problems and shortcomings in the way that the program was working. But still, even though there were these challenges, I would say with the many people that I've spoken to, they have had very positive experiences anyway. So I think we need to learn from that and then indeed make mobility one of the options for young people. And of course, you need to have some kind of guidance. You need to have some kind of support in terms of learning a different language, for example, or also finding your way around. But I think that mobility, if we discuss it in a European context, it should always be one of the options. So we should not just rely on, you know, all the Spanish engineers going to Germany and working there, because I believe mobility can work and can be a great experience if it's something that people are motivated for. And if you force people to move away from their home country without having a perspective there, I think it can have very negative implications.
Okay.
And this is why I would say mobility, yes, but you need to have motivated people to do it.
Okay, Pablo, student perspective on mobility, is it something which is really on the radar, or is it the last resort?
None of those. I totally agree with the last message. Mobility have to be an option, but and here we have a Polish young person, right? A Spanish young person, and I'm another Spanish young person that are in Brussels, and we chose this mobility. But not everybody wants this mobility, and we should also believe. We should also fight for having the job that we want next to our home, next to our families, next to what we feel that is ours.
It's a right.
Actually, yeah, totally. We are being forced to have this mobility to go to Germany or to go to Switzerland or China to find a job, and we should have the right to stay in our home places. And the question that you mentioned is, why don't you consider mobility? Because now we are seeing the refugee crisis, but we have to consider ourselves also that immigration or migration to another country is another sort of forced mobility. So we also have to consider ourselves with the right of saying that we want a job in our home countries.
Okay, one of the Portuguese ministers 2 years ago, I think, he said, we can't fix this employment situation right now. You have to leave the country if you want a job. Detlef, how do we join so many economic resources? Because the European Union has huge resources, and yet we have this huge problem with youth unemployment. What's going on? Where is the disconnect between the exploitation of resources and the failure to exploit this potential for employment?
Well, first of all, one should say that we are not doing nothing. So we are doing a lot, and the results are visible on the job market. Youth unemployment has been reduced by more than 1 million people, the registered unemployed people. The so-called needs structure, the non-registered ones, are still more of a problem because we need to capture them. So in a way, we are doing something, and the results are already visible. So the glass may be half empty, but it's still
filling.
It's filling. Yeah?
Okay.
The question, of course, is to mobility, or should the jobs come to people? I mean, this cannot be answered black and white. You cannot have the right that a job will be created, the exact job, by the way, that you, of course, would dream of, next door. This is an illusion. What you have a right for is a policy that maximizes the probability for you to find what you need in a reasonable distance to you. But we also believe that mobility is a life chance. And it's not only a kind of forced mobility going to somewhere. And this, of course, is, for the time being, rather normal for academic people. So through our Erasmus program, for instance, we stimulate mobility across the European countries. It is less normal for the vocational training students that are between 15 and 19, which is a difficult age for mobility. But we should also try to help them to have an experience, at least 1 year, for instance, in another country, to enrich their, let's say, life chances, and also become more European. I mean, you are, of course, already converted, but we need to reach out to everyone.
Okay, Krista, and then we'll come to Fabio in a second. Krista, the unions as well, and particularly in countries like Spain, which unions are very strong, and the austerity argument seems to have given them greater strength, and yet the inflexible labour market seems to be destroying investment opportunity and the employment opportunity as well. How does this get fixed?
Well, I'm not a specialist on the Spanish situation, I have to say. I mean, it's not my country, so please don't ask me that question. But what I can try to give you as an answer is what we have seen, at least in some countries where the labor markets are very rigid, that it becomes more and more difficult for young people to get into the labor market. This is why I think it's quite important what the Commission did with the European semester and really watching over the labor market, the structural reforms getting on there, and also the labor rights. I think it's not everything is down to the argument of money. That's not the point. But it's a lot is done about feelings, about the sense of what's getting on there. And if, for instance, I don't have a chance to get rid of an employee that doesn't work properly because he is on an undefinite contract, I may be, as an employer, more hesitant to employ somebody else.
Okay. Fabio, then we start to sum up.
Yeah, mobility is of course a possible solution for the unemployment, youth unemployment we have, but we live in the most entrepreneurial age ever, so mobility is even easier to do. However, in a long term, I think every country we want good professionals working there. We don't want to be the Spanish or the Polish or whatever good professionals. We don't want to be the ones that have to go to another
So
country.
we don't want the
can
brain
do
drain.
it. We can do it in a short term. We can do it. We have to do it. But in a long term, it would be a better situation if each professional can work, can even choose between working at home or abroad.
Katharina.
Yeah, in my opinion, the crucial point in here is that young people don't have stability. They studying, but they don't know if they be working. They are running their company's business, but they don't know if they will be failure or not. So, in my opinion, European Union should think about it, about the stability of young people.
Okay. Sum up on this and what we discussed so far today. Best quote, I think, so far is the glass is half empty but filling. Definitely you win today. Thank you for that. So what we've covered really is the precarious nature of the labour market at the moment, and the employers need to get involved early. If they don't get involved early, the curriculum doesn't get shaped in a way which matches with the employer's needs. We have good examples in Austria, Germany and Switzerland, and we have to see new investment in infrastructure as well, which will help us get there. But at risk is not just an economic model, it's the democratic model, the values of Europe, what Europe stands for, and the confidence that the younger generation in particular has with what Europe stands for. And if it fails in this, what comes after it? It's not just economic collapse, it could be more serious than that. The investment plan, the Juncker investment plan, where we're going with that at the moment in terms of translating the investment plan into real concrete action in terms of business development, but the youth guarantee and the practical work experience which can come with this is beginning to show results, but isn't quite there yet. And after 2 years, we'll need more than the 6.4 billion which has been invested. And as Terry was saying, we need to look seriously at what happens next after that. The job deficit within the EU. How do we create more jobs? How do we export more? How do we create winning companies which can compete with the best in the world? That they're not just trying to be another Google, as we hear so much of here, but they're trying to be the best in every category. And we have world-class companies. So how do we translate the small companies into growth companies? How do we get over that barrier which sits with national language issues, cultural issues, legislative issues as well, creating a business-friendly environment where micro firms can boost entrepreneurship and where failure is not seen as the last stop, but as the jumping board for the next category. Innovation within Europe is a key thing, which you're seeing much more investment in from the European Commission at the moment as well, but it's got to be matched by mentality as well as capacity with the member states as well. And growing startups, social entrepreneurship, the changing nature of the workplace we discussed today as well. Is work the same as it was for our parents' generation, or are we looking more for something which is satisfying and meaningful, and the sharing collaborative economy are coming into their own with that as well, which the European Commission also recognises. Mobility, to finish with, is a life chance, but should it be compelled, or should it be something that we have as an option for our professional lives? And what more can the European Union do to facilitate mobility as well? I'd like to thank all our guests today: Ted Reintke from Germany, Detlef Eckert from the European Commission, Christy Svang from the European Economic Social Committee, Pablo Hernandez from European Students Forum, and our students Katerina Poacho from Poland and Fabio Cassano from Sweden. I'm Brian Maguire. Thank you.